everybody. Good morning. This is Bud Pites. John Bruno could not make it, so I have. It's 9 a.m. and we'll begin the meeting. Before we begin, I want to know that I want everyone that the meeting is being recorded. Does anybody object at this time? If any objections from a member of the public, they can be invited not to speak or leave the meeting. The moderator will control the flow of the meeting and introduce each action, discussion, and informational item prior to board discussing and voting. A quick reminder, we ask everybody to speak loudly and clearly throughout the meeting. Also, please note your mic's muted if you're not speaking. We're going to first order item. We're going to call this meeting to order. Introductions. Roll call is taken at the beginning of the meeting to establish a quorum of members and is present. Ask each board member to state their name and indicate that they are present for the meeting or do a roll call of members. At this time, I'd like to do a roll call.
Could we please ask the board members to state their name and indicate that you are present for the meeting?
Berletic here.
Norwood Foden here.
George Bivens here.
Constable Craig West over here.
And then, Bud, if you could just
Okay.
state your name then as well, just so we have that on the record.
Okay, Bud Pites here.
So we do have a quorum to continue the normal business, conduct business as normal. I will go ahead and recognize the PCCD staff on the call. If I do not state your name, please speak up. So I will introduce myself. I'm Sherry Leffler. I am the supervisor for the Constables Education and Training Board. And then if I could start, I will do John Fowl, who is the manager of the Bureau of Training Services at PCCD, Tracy Beaver, Constables Education and Training Program, Nick Hartman, Constables Education and Training Program. We also have Deborah Sandiford, who is the legal counsel for PCCD. We have Megan Staub, who is the curriculum manager, for the Bureau of Training Services. And we also have Beth Romero. Are there any other PCCD in attendance that I failed to recognize?
Sherry, this is Diane Morgan. I'm here as well.
Okay, thank you, Diane.
Hey, good morning, Sherry. It's Mike Pennington. I'm here.
Good morning, Mike. Thank you. And then
Okay,
we can go ahead and start with the first action item then, please.
Okay, first action item, unapproved minutes of the May 6th, 2021 meeting. Motion to approve. Board member?
So moved.
Berletic, I make that motion.
Second?
Bivens seconds.
Thank you, sir. Moving on. Everybody in favor? Yes?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And
Okay,
prior,
looks like
just one moment, Bud. Prior to, we did ask if there was any discussion from the board members, but we did fail to ask if there was any public comment on this action item. If there is any public comment, we are asking that you state your name and your county prior to speaking, and that you keep your comments to 2 minutes or less. Is there any public comment on the action item of the board meeting minutes of the May 6th Constables Education and Training Board meeting? Hearing none, now we can finish with the voting, please. Did we have a second
In
on the
favor?
motion?
I think we had a second on the motion.
Bivens seconded it.
Right. Okay, it's been approved, motion's approved. Second action item, unapproved financial report of August 12th, 2021 meeting. Any questions? Motion to approve?
First, Bud, we need to ask for discussion and then public comment on every action item.
Okay. Any comments on it? From the board members or the public? Hearing none? Yeah, hearing none, I guess we'll take a vote.
Okay, can I interrupt you real quick, Sherry?
Yes,
The order of things would be for the motion to be called for the chair to ask for someone to make that motion, someone to second it. Then we go into any discussion and any public voice, and then go into the voice vote and ask for ayes and nays and abstentions.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So on this one, I think we're just waiting for the motion to be called.
Okay. The motion is being called. Unapproved financial report is August 12th, 2021 meeting.
I'll make that motion. Patricia Norwood Foden.
Berletic, I'll second the motion.
Okay, hearing none. We'll go on with a discussion of the motion. Anybody with any input into the discussion? Hearing none. We'll take a vote. All in favor? Okay.
Westover, aye.
Bivens,
Berletic,
aye.
aye.
Norwood
Okay.
Foden, aye.
Bites aye.
and are there any nays or abstentions from this motion? Hearing none, motion approved. And I would like to recognize Sally Berry is also in attendance on the call as PCCD staff. I apologize if we missed you earlier, Sally. And the next, we do have another action item, and I do apologize because it was not added to the script, but it is on the agenda, and that is for instructor certification. So I'd ask that the board move to that, and I'm going to ask Tracy Beaver if she would report on those instructor certifications, please.
Good morning, everyone. As Sherry addressed, the instructor certification is next on the agenda. Penn State University, Jazzy, has submitted 2 applications to be considered for certification. The first is Charles Dahlman. He is requesting the general topic for certification. The staff does recommend board certification for Charles Dahlman for the general topic. The second is Kevin McClincy. He is also requesting the general topic for certification, and staff does recommend board certification for Kevin McClincy for the general topic.
Is there any
Those
discussion amongst the board
those
members? Go ahead.
Those candidates are on page 14 and 15, if you'd like to look at their resume. And I think they have real good resumes. So I'd be in favor of bringing a board. Anybody else with comment or?
No, it's Constable Westover. I'll move that we approve these two for instructor certification.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that. Norwood Voden.
Okey-doke.
Is there any discussion amongst the board members or PCCD staff? Hearing none, we'll then ask for any public comment on this action item. Hearing none, then we can vote on this motion.
Right, Jay.
Berletic, aye.
Bivens, aye.
Westover, aye.
Norwood Voden, aye.
Moving on. Sherry?
And we would be moving on to the, any in opposition or any abstentions?
Hearing none, motion would be approved. We could go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, which would be the discussion under the discussion items. I will be from this point forward providing a supervisor's report, which will be basically an update on program initiatives and projects that we have, and also to help give the board a general idea of where staff are with different things. First of all, before I start in with my report, I would just like to, along program staff as well as PCCD staff and the board members, I would like to recognize Constable Craig Westover for all of his dedication and commitment to the Constable's Education and Training Board, the program staff, and also the constable population. I was in attendance for the first evening of the recent 80-hour basic training class. And I just wanted to highlight that he has sacrificed many weekends to instruct at various training classes across the state, and he does not get paid to do this. And I think that's an honorable thing. He is an exceptional instructor who brings both a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table, and then he graciously shares all that experience and knowledge with the constable population. I know, again, I was in attendance, and I'll ask Nick to speak here a little bit later during my report regarding his experience at the basic training, but I just wanted the board and everyone in this meeting today to recognize Craig for his dedication. So thank you, Craig. The next on my supervisor's report, does anyone want to make a comment? I'm sorry if I cut you off. Okay, I'll continue further. For COVID restrictions, we have updated the COVID protocols, and we are still asking everyone to do a self-screening form that will be provided by the training delivery contractors. Due to the changes, the mask mandates and other mandates that have been rescinded now, this information has been emailed out to the constable population and also posted to our website. We are still asking that constables and instructors still self-screen for any symptoms prior to attending a training class. We have returned to the building. Program staff will be working in the office 2 Tuesdays during a 4-week cycle, or due to any other operational needs that we may have. So there will be instances, at the end of the year when staff print and mail the ID cards, we're in the office for like 3 to 4 days. So that's an operational need. But we are teleworking on all other days. So we will continue to have email as our primary source of communication to, the board members and the constable population. So nothing is really changing that since our teleworking endeavors. However, recently Penn State University has also updated their mask mandate, and masks must be worn at all Penn State University facilities and functions. So there will be any training classes upcoming for Penn State Jazzy in the western part of the state. You will be receiving additional information on this in your confirmation letters from the training coordinator, Tony Muha. 2022 ID cards, we are hoping to mail those out about the second week in December. So those will be going out for the 2022. Something else I wanted to bring to everyone's attention with the elections coming up, we have a huge turnover of our constable population coming up with this election. Terms of office expiring 12/30 December 31st of 2021. If we do not receive a new term of office, so a new election certificate, new appointment orders, your terms will expire. The constables and deputy constables' terms will expire December 31st. You will also not be allowed to enroll into 2022 Con Ed and annual firearms qualification classes because that term is expiring. So it's very important that for newly elected constables, for basic training, and constables who are reelected, to get those election certificates into program staff so we can get those terms of office updated for you as soon as possible and as quickly as possible. This information will be going out in training bulletins as well. We are hopeful to have the schedule for next year out to the training population. We are hoping by Monday, December 6th. So that will be very important because if the constable's term of office expires December 31st, we're opening up online training classes for next year on December 6th. They will not be able to enroll in those classes. So just to bring that to everyone's attention. And again, we will publicize this in future training bulletins. We are both of the programs, both the constables and sheriffs and deputy sheriffs programs are still going through an audit with the audit Office of Inspector General. No new information has been requested recently in the past couple weeks, but we have not had a final report yet on that. So that is still outstanding as far as program issues. Status of the 2021 training, as I mentioned, Nick Hartman had attended the basic training. We had 18 students in that class plus Nick. As of today, 15 of those 18, I should say 17 constables have become certified. We have 2 that have not yet become certified. So that means they have not filed their liability insurance. We were also able to present portions of the Every Constable's Worst Nightmare, which is a 4-hour module for the classroom this year during the basic training. So that was very beneficial to the constable population that was in attendance because they're going to miss out basically on that curriculum. Hopefully at least for a couple years until we can get libraries set up and that type of thing. Nick, is there anything that you would like to add about your experience at the basic training?
We definitely provide quality education to the constables when it comes to what is required of the act. And it was a very enjoyable experience because it put a lot of the pieces into the big picture. And the constables who were there, definitely a wide variety of skills and knowledge. And it was nice for them to be able to kind of have a common ground. Um, Overall, I greatly enjoyed it.
And now Nick will also be attending the basic firearms class that will be starting actually Friday evening. So that will run through this weekend and then will end on August 22nd. So it's a Friday night and then a Saturday and Sunday for 2 weekends for the 40 hours then. As of today, which is a good interlude into the basic firearms, we have 14 individuals enrolled in that basic firearms course. 12 were actually from this basic training class that just concluded in July, and 2 were from previous basic training classes that either they weren't able to get enrolled in time, or I believe one of them may have even been a failure at a previous basic firearms class. As far as Con Ed trainings, we are still rolling along. We originally had 62 classes scheduled, Con Ed classes, classroom subjects. 21 have been completed, and so far we've canceled 23 of those classes. We are still keeping in mind that we do still have, a considerable amount of the population that has not enrolled into a Con Ed class that would need to complete the requirements. So we are slowly going to be whittling down those classes, because we just cannot hold classes with 6 and 7 people in it. So we're going to be consolidating classes and combining classes towards the end of the year, but we will make sure that there is an available spot for those. But we did caution the constable population to get enrolled into their classroom subjects by the end of May. Because again, we cannot hold these classes open forever. So if you have not enrolled into an 8-hour classroom Con Ed class, you need to do so immediately. We've had, of the 21 that we've completed, we've had 358 who successfully completed the 8-hour classroom subjects. The online trainings, really low percentages. We continually remind the constables that these subjects need to be completed to meet the training requirements. Right now, we've only had 233 that have completed the diversity online subject. That's 21% of the constable population. Effective communication, 195 have completed, 17% of the constable population. And then ethics, 178, 16% of the population. The deadline to complete the online training subjects is going to be 5 p.m. on Friday, November 19th. There will be no leeway with that. So you do need to get in there and get that completed if you're interested in maintaining your certification for 2022. 5-hour annual firearms qualifications. We had 47 classes scheduled, 22 have been completed, and so far we have canceled 7. We've had 405 who have successfully qualified with at least one firearm during one of those qualification classes. And we have had 17 failures for the annual firearms qual this year. I previously stated we are going to try to have the 2022 training schedule and the online enrollment open at 8 a.m. on Monday, December 6th. That is our goal right now. That date could change, just to let you know, but we are currently working on our projections and our end of year timeline. We are hopeful to get that information out to Temple and Penn State Jazzy by the end of this week or early next week, to have them start actually reserving locations and pulling that schedule together. So I apologize that was a little long-winded, but there was a lot of information I wanted to review with everyone, with the board. Is there any questions on anything that I raised in my supervisor's report?
Sherry,
Constable Westover, I have
go ahead, Constable. I'll
Sure.
wait. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Sherry, appreciate the kind words. Just one thing I think that needs reiterated is on that deadline on the election certificates. Last election cycle, I fielded a lot of complaints from folks that were waiting on election certificates from their Board of Elections. And they've got to be somewhat proactive if they haven't got their election certificate. And a lot of the delays are, I believe, because of write-in votes, things of that nature, that delays getting that certificate out to the constable, in order to get registered for training. So I think it just needs to be reiterated, maybe in the bulletin, that you got to be proactive with your Board of Elections to get that. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. And I know there have been some counties where they will not provide the election certificate until the constable is actually sworn into office. Now, I'm not sure how that works with re-elections, if it's, a constable who's currently in office and they get re-elected, if they would still be that stringent, but that's also a concern as well. But we will, and we always do, project to have enough seats for the certified constables that we currently have in our system. So there will be a spot for everyone.
Sherry, quick question about the lower enrollment numbers for Con Ed trainings. I guess in your experience, do you normally see those enrollments taper off in an election year because you anticipate constables not, upping their election or, running again? Is this kind of a trend that you've seen over the years?
Well, actually, in reference to the online subject matter, last year, 40% of the constables completed the course, 1 4-hour subject last year in the last 2 weeks before the deadline. So that's an issue that we're going to be dealing with, I believe, again this year. But we also have, we had set out a little bit later here in the meeting, we are going to be going over a demographic survey where we asked those specific questions because we knew that constables would be, there's some that are saying, I can't do the online training, so I'm not going to come back next year, or I'm retiring due to health issues, those types of things. We have a semi good gauge on that. But it's really hard because only 42% of the constable population responded to the survey. You know what I mean? So, but we have thought about that even as far as the projections for next year, because, for example, this year we had 62 Con Ed classes scheduled, and we've already canceled, for the Con Eds, we've canceled 23 already. So that's a quarter of our Con Ed classes. So are we going to see that same trend going into next year as well? So, but again, we will project for the number of certified constables that we currently have in for future years. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yep, you're welcome. Any other comments or discussion on the supervisor's report?
Sherry, if I may, I'd like to also let the board know that I attend a great many of the continuing education classes, not only to teach them, but sometimes to proctor them as well. And I make it a point to address the classes before every single class to let them know that the training deadline for the online portion of the class has been moved back from the beginning of December, as it was last year, to the 19th of November, and tell them that now is the time to get online and do their online training, because the passwords have to be reset every 6 months. And if there is an issue, now is the time to do it, not at 4 p.m. on the 19th of November.
Good point. Thank you, Dee. And that was Dee Biter, Temple University's constable coordinator. Is there any other discussion items that the board members would like to bring up and discuss at this time? Okay, Vice Chair, we can go ahead and start in on the informational items then, please.
Okay. Informational items. Where do you want to go with that? Would you like to take that over for me, please?
Sure. We just have a few informational items to bring to the board's attention. The first of which, as I stated just during my response to Patricia, we sent out a demographic survey to the constable population, and this is just a very high level informational sheet that we had put together. So we sent out the survey to approximately 1,451 constables. So that would be active constables and deputy constables who have a valid term of office in our system. Of those, we received 691 responses, which I must say is the best response rate that I have ever seen in my experience with 12 years with the experience with the constables program. So I feel very good that we had such a good response. Of those responses, you can see here the top 6 counties that responded. Allegheny County had 13.8% of those responses that came from Allegheny County. And as I stated to staff when we were reviewing this, these 6 counties routinely use constables or have working constables in those counties. So that was one thing to highlight as well. We also looked at the demographics for sex and age. You can see our highest population is still between the ages of 56 and 65. Years as an active constable, you can see that those percentages are dropping off as well. We have less than 1% that have, 45, 46 plus years experience, or even 1% 35, 36 to 40 years. Hours worked per week as a constable. This is very telling too for staff, and I think also for the board to highlight of the constable responses that we received. We had only 35, almost 36% are working 1 to 10 hours a week as a constable. We have less than 15% of our constables are working 40 plus hours a week as a constable. So there, 15% of those responses are working full time as a constable for the courts. Of those responses, again, here is just information on the constables that are actually working for the courts. 538 are saying yes, and 143 are saying no. Then we have the type of court work here, civil and criminal, broken out, and then the largest majority do both civil and criminal. Is there any questions on this demographic survey or anything that staff or would like to comment on in relation to this that I missed?
Sherry, it's Trisha again. Regarding the hours worked per week as a constable, was there any consideration for the fact that constable hours were reduced significantly last year because of the COVID restrictions, particularly with constable transports? We weren't transporting any constable or prisoners out of those facilities because they were locked down. Could that have affected those numbers if this was that this survey was taken in another year?
Hey, Trish, this is John Fowle. I was going to say, yeah, I'm sure that had an impact, but I would tell you that for the 27 years I've been with the program, this has kind of always been the trend that the majority of the constables we train, work part-time, probably less than 15 hours a week in past surveys and just past information we've gathered. So I'm sure the courts being closed had an impact, but it's still kind of in the normal trend.
All right, thank you.
Any questions, comments, concerns on the demographic survey? And again, I was very impressed that we received as many responses back as we did. Okay, then I'm going to turn over the last informational item over to Tracy Beaver.
The last informational item is the status of certifications. And these numbers are as of July 29th of 2021. There were 901 constables and deputy constables who are currently active and certified. That means that they have a valid term of office, they have liability insurance, and they have gone through the required training to be certified. Of those, 728, or roughly 81%, are certified to carry a firearm to perform their duties as a constable. Since the inception of the program in 1996, there have been a total of 4,650 constables and deputy constables who have successfully completed either the basic training or the waiver examination and have been certified by the board. Any discussions or questions on the status of certifications? Okay, thank you, Sherry.
Vice Chair, would you like to open up the public voice section, please? At this point, we're going to go ahead and open up the floor for the public voice session. Each person who previously registered with Tracy Beaver to comment prior to the meeting, we will announce you separately. Please try to keep your comments to 2 minutes or less. If you have no public comments or questions, but you did indicate that you wish to speak during the meeting, please just indicate that you have no comments at that time. Tracy, would you like to go ahead and start our list of registered or requested commenters?
Yes, thank you, Sherry. The first one is out of Westmoreland County, Abraham Smith.
Good morning. This is Abraham Smith, Westmoreland County. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I am not a constable currently, but I am unopposed for election for what will be my first term coming up in November. And I'm aware of several other individuals here in Westmoreland County that are in the same situation. So we're starting to look at matters of training and certification seriously because, as was pointed out earlier, we have to get into these courses at the earliest point we can, which I imagine is right after we're sworn in January. There seems to be a lot of misperception among people who are replacing longtime constables, at least here in Westmoreland, who are hearing from their predecessor that it doesn't cost anything. The training's all paid for by the state because that's the way it was then. Now, as I've dug deep into this issue, and I believe I spoke to some of the staff in the last month, it costs north of $2,500 for the total of basic classroom and firearms training for a new constable. Just to point out, you're going to run into a real storm of people after January 1st who are going to be shocked, sticker shocked, at the cost of the basic training. My question is there any possibility that this cost is going to be lessening to the individual in the near future? Is there any other source of income, or how are the revenues going? Because I understand this was a move done about 2 years ago due to the reduction in revenues from the courts. And that's my comment and my question.
John Fowle, can you jump in here and answer this gentleman's question?
Sure, Judge. Yes, Mr. Smith. As you said, the board made that move about 2 years ago because of the training fund declining. And how we arrived at that dollar amount was we looked at basically what does it cost the board to put on to train a constable in the 80-hour basic as well as the 40-hour firearms. And we will revisit that price every year based on, our costs, if they change or not. But I don't anticipate it dropping significantly. It may drop a little depending on, what our anticipated training costs are. But I think it's kind of here to stay for a while.
Does that answer your question, Abraham?
Yes, it does. Yes, thank you.
Any other comments regarding that, Mr. Smith?
No, that'll be all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next person for public voice is out of Berks County, Constable Ryan Cooper. Are you present? Last chance, Constable Cooper, are you present? Okay, hearing no comment. The next person out of Center County is Constable Ron Quinn. Constable Quinn, are you present?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yes, Ron Quinn, Center County, and also with PAFOC. Two things. Reflecting back to the election certificates, Constable Westover was kind of right there and stuff like that as far as some of the counties not issuing out the election certificate until about January. And one of the reasons that's been explained to me that they don't issue them out before then is because the office holder of the current position, their term, whether active or not, does not expire until the 31st of December of that election year, so that they don't get the election certificates until they're able to swear in, usually around the first week of January. In which case, if you're already setting these deadlines and stuff back in December, or openings back in December and stuff, it puts those constables at a great disadvantage and stuff if they're going to be late to the game because they can't supply the proper forms and stuff in time. Any way that can be extended to, say, the middle of January.
Well, normally we do have classes starting in January. So in order to maintain that schedule, we would have to open up the schedule earlier than the beginning of the year. We will have availability for every constable in the state and a spot available for them to attend both the continuing education classroom and also for the annual firearms qualification.
Okay. So it doesn't concern you that, again, constables that aren't going to get their election certificates probably until around the middle of January or beginning of January are going to be late for the vote.
At this point in time, I'm up for whatever I am told to do. So if I am told to change that date till the end after the new year, I will do that. But at this
Well,
point, as far as the staff are concerned, that was the date that we came up with.
We do have the board here right now and stuff, and that's who determines it, correct?
Actually, that is a staff duty to create that timeline. And normally, prior to COVID, normally the training schedule would have been delivered both online, and the online enrollment would have been the first week of the Thanksgiving week. I apologize. So that week of Thanksgiving, that Monday is when we normally had opened that up. Once we got in with the online training classes last year, we didn't open the schedule up until after the new year. I understand your concerns, but there are also staff processes and things that we need to do on our end to prepare for this year, the training year.
And what I would say, Ron, is, as Sherry said, we make sure there are enough slots available in a training year. And traditionally, every year, we end up canceling Con Ed classes or firearms because we do not get enough people. So there's always enough training slots. Somebody may not get their first choice, but there are always enough classes available.
And the training classes are first come, first served.
Right. Okay. And then I just wanted to reflect on that since it was brought up and stuff. The main issue I called in about was, if I'm not mistaken, there's a difference between those, when it comes to firearms, between those who do not qualify and those who disqualify. Basically, if you go out there to fire, you're disqualified, and basically you need to go back to the classes again. And from what I understand, the individual has to pay for those classes to get requalified again. Am I correct on that? For
that is correct. For a failure of the annual firearms qualification, for a failure, they are afforded 2 opportunities to qualify at each phase. So phase 1, they would be given 2 attempts, and phase 2, they would be given 2 attempts. If they fail on those basically 4 attempts to qualify, they are considered a failure, and their firearms certification per board policy is revoked at that time.
Right.
Now, and then yes, they would have to pay to go to a subsequent class.
Right. Now, for those that do not qualify, okay, for example, a constable who worked a couple of years, but then through no fault of their own, injury, illness, whatever the case may be, they have to basically sit out a year, but then they want to come back another year or two and be certified again. Well, if the person went through basic before and qualified, why are we requiring those individuals to go back and take the basic course again? And let me preface it this way, because a lot of all the other law enforcement agencies that I've been affiliated with, gone with, and everything, and also if you want to throw it in, even those in the military, if you have a break in service, so to speak, they don't make you go back through the basic again. Basically, you do have to qualify again. And in our case, I can see having the person pay for that requalification expense again. But as far as going all the way back through the basic course, that doesn't sound right.
Okay, well, first of all, could you repeat what you stated, because I wasn't following? So
I can understand a person who disqualifies,
who fails,
you explained that process, correct. However, if you have an individual who did not qualify based on injuries, illness, whatever the case may be, you know, so now they miss a year.
Yep,
So
they
they
would
did not
be an
they
excused
did
absence.
okay, but to make them go, is the policy for them then when they decide that they need to come back is to go back through basic again
There's a, Ron, there's
and
a
pay for
time,
that?
there's a time frame. So part of the logic when the board put that in place was, first of all, constables have no other means of training unless they're paying for it and doing it on their own. You know, if
Right.
a police department, a sheriff's office, they have trainers in their departments. They do that remedial training, et cetera. We have that at the Deputy Sheriff Academy. A deputy fails firearms, they go home to their county, and then the sheriff, if they send them through remedial training, they can come back and they have to retake the whole 80 hours of firearms. But they get that support training. Constables don't, and that was the logic the board when they put that policy into place. You know, firearms is a perishable skill. And I know talking with Constable Westover, he said that he'd seen a little concern about people's firearms handling skills have kind of declined over the last couple of years, that we haven't done annual training, that we've only done qualification.
And what was that year period that the threshold that needs to be stepped over before they have to go back to the basic again?
That is in board regulation. That's a 3 years or more with a lapse in
Okay.
their certification.
But if it's less than 3 years of a lapse, do they still have to go back to basic and pay for it?
No, they would go back to an annual
Okay.
firearms class.
Okay. Would they have to pay for that?
If it was a result of a failure. So this is where you're saying that they do not qualify or they disqualify, that means that they are a failure. If they fail
No. I'm not talking about failures. Failures to me is somebody who goes out, actually shoots, and can't hit the target. That's a failure.
Yes.
I'm talking about the ones who can't go to the classes, can't go get recertified because of whatever the personal reasons are and stuff. But they want to come back within that 3-year threshold.
Okay.
They
Within
would
that 3 years,
just-
they
they
would,
would just
yes,
take a
they would be
regular-
able to come back. But now I think what you're maybe confusing with, if they do not have, if their base certification expires. So let's say they don't do any constable work for 2 years. In order
Right.
for them to go to an annual firearms class, they still have to have that base certification. Between 2 and 5 years lapse in certification of the base certification, they would be required to obtain financial liability insurance before they could enroll into a Con Ed class to get that base certification back up. Once they get that base certification back up, then they can enroll into an annual qualification course.
Do they have to pay for that?
No, unless there was a failure or a no-show.
Right.
But they would not be required to pay for that.
Okay, and as far as no-shows go, because I know that sometimes people have a hard time trying to get in contact with people and stuff, and inadvertently miss a deadline. I'm assuming that the board would take that on a case-by-case basis.
The board policy or the board regulation
Okay.
states that they are to contact within 7 calendar days prior to the class start date. If we have someone that is on their way to a Con Ed class or an annual qualification and they're involved in a car accident and they don't contact the training delivery coordinator till the next day or the next week, we would still look at that
Okay.
as an excused
All right.
absence.
All right, then. That's what I wanted to get clarification on. I really appreciate it.
Yep, not a problem.
Thank you.
Constable Quinn, any other comments, questions?
Not right now.
Okay, thank you very much. The next public voice is Constable Antoine Malloy out of Allegheny County. Constable Malloy, are you present?
I am present.
Thank you. You may go ahead.
All right. Good morning to the board. Constable Antoine Malloy, Allegheny County, Vice President of Allegheny County Constables Association and newly elected President of PAFOC. I had 2 things that I'd like to address. The first one is the policy of police officers who enter the constabulary and seeks waivers. There's there's a couple constables from Allegheny County who are former or present police officers who were denied the opportunity to take the waiver exam because at some point they were in the constable's training program. I would ask that the board re-examine the program of disallowing these individuals to take the waiver exam, only for the fact that if a police officer who comes into the constabulary was never in the constable program, he's able to take the waiver, but a police officer who was previously in the program and retires and comes back as a constable is not able to take the program. Those two things don't make sense. If somebody could give an explanation on the logistics of that and how something like that could occur and why we're doing it that way, I would appreciate it. And again, like I said, I would ask that the board re-examine that policy in the form of making it possible for a police officer who becomes a constable and was previously in the program, make it so that this person is able to take the waiver exam, as opposed to a police officer who was never in the constable program. That person is able to take the waiver program. Those two things don't make sense.
Anton, this is John Fowle. What I'll say to you is when that policy went into place in the regulation, the original intent of that was it was one or the other. It was because if you took the waiver test and you failed, then you would have to attend basic training. If you took, because at the time too, when the act was passed, anybody who was a constable, when the act passed, they had that same choice. They could either take the waiver test or they could go to basic training. We had about 600 or 700 take the waiver exam, and I think less than 100 failed. But so that was when that was written. That's how it was written, as it's one or the other. If you had previous certification, then you would meet whatever training requirement to reactivate your certification. And if the board would like to take a look at that, probably sometime next year, we're going to be bringing to the board some updates to regulation, because over time, some things need to be cleaned up or fixed, or things have changed. So that would be an opportunity for the board to address that issue.
Okay.
I'd like
so,
John and Antoine Verletic here. I would really like to discuss this after the call, because I have to agree with what Antoine says. There's been a couple cases brought to light here, and it really, I don't know, it doesn't seem fair, and I would really like to discuss this further with you folks off the public voice so we can hammer something out here. I think it needs to be changed.
Well, what will happen, Judge, is the board, the staff will come to the board with proposed changes in the regulation, and between now and then, if board members have things in the regulation they think need to be corrected or updated or fixed, they can go ahead and forward those to staff and we can incorporate it. Because when we update the regulations, it'll go through, I'll tell you, several drafts going through the board and that kind of stuff, and review by PCCD, and then eventually it goes to the Independent Regulatory Review Commission. And once submitted, then, as long as there's no problems, it can take a year and a half under the IRRC to get it approved. In fact, staff's going to be doing an informational meeting in the fall with IRRC just to make sure we know any changes in their process and their requirements. So it's not a quick change to change regulations.
Well, I understand that, and rightfully so. We'd be changing regulations every half hour. We don't need that either, but I don't know. I think maybe, can we discuss this after the meeting just for a short time, John?
Well, and like I said, yeah, I would encourage the board to look at the regs and, send us what they think needs to be changed. Sherry and I actually spent about an hour yesterday going through the regs and looking at things that we were going to suggest to the board that need to be updated. So This is the perfect time to address that issue.
Well, And
You have a
also in
short-
relation to this too, Judge, there's another section of the regulations that states that if 5 years after the office is vacated, that constable, in order to reactivate that original certification, they are required to successfully complete a basic training course. So, I mean, there's 2 sections of the act that or the regulations that would need to be looked at in order to make these changes. I just wanted to point that out.
I follow you, and I thank you for pointing that out. But if I could have a few minutes after the meeting, I'd certainly appreciate it.
All right, Judge, I'll give you a call.
Thank you.
Can I add something else? Hello?
Go ahead,
Yes,
Anton.
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Also, these same constables, they've applied through the grievance process. And why couldn't this be something that we could address or grant an exception under the grievance process? I had another comment moving on regarding the survey that you took and the statistics. My only suggestion or comment regarding the where you took the survey or the question was asked regarding the number of hours per week as a constable, that some type of asterisk or something like that be added there to include court work, and that there be something that denotes that COVID-19 would have had a serious impact on this work, on the court work. I mean, and constables had no alternative but to seek work elsewhere outside of the court system, because there was very little work happening for constables at this time last year, maybe for like the last year and a half due to COVID. So that's all I'm saying. So I would like for these numbers not to be used in something moving forward as far as training or trying to discuss, what type of opportunities are available for finances to come back into the PCCD program regarding the work that constables would do. That's my only comment.
And Anton, we addressed that earlier in the meeting. Board member had asked that exact question, that, the lack of court work due to COVID impacted those numbers, and I would agree with you that had. But what I also said is historically those numbers kind of have are fall in line with what we have seen over 27 years, that a large portion of the constables we train, probably work less than 15 hours a week on constable work. A large portion of the constables are part-time. So that's the one reason we still have our training on weekends, because most constables are working other jobs. So.
Well, that's one of the things I was getting at when we say the constables only work part-time. Yes, there is quite often in a lot of these areas only part-time work available for the courts. So when you say are they working as a constable, if you included to say for the courts, yes, because in some districts there's not full-time work available for the constables, but many of us, and I've got probably 30 guys and girls in my group that we still work full-time as a constable, and there may not be, as of this past year showed, there wasn't full-time work available in the court system, but for some districts that's how it is all the time. I'm not in Allegheny County. There's plenty available, but I've been a constable for 26 years now, and I've always been full-time. I know quite a number of guys who've always been full-time. So some of those numbers may be skewed one way or another. I just would like to make sure that we're careful about how we say these things. Okay? That's it for me. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Constable Malloy. And the last person who requested to speak at Public Voice is Mr. Thomas Pauley out of Allegheny County. Mr. Pauley, are you present?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I am. Am I coming through clear?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. My call today is actually in reference to the basic training waiver applications for law enforcement officers, which Constable Malloy and Judge Berletic just had talked about. Just a little background on myself. I was I was a appointed deputy constable in 1999. I went through the basic training course, and my certification number is B002025. And almost immediately after getting my certification, I accepted a job with the Allegheny County Courts of Common Pleas as an adult probation officer, in which I had to basically resign my deputy constable position because as a court worker, we weren't allowed to do both jobs. Prior to that, I was a corrections officer at the Allegheny County Jail. Then I went into the probation officer job, and I just recently retired as a city of Pittsburgh police officer with 20 years of service. Basically, what I'm asking for is I dealt with Ms. Leffler on this issue, and I filed a grievance, and Ms. Leffler was very helpful in the process, and I appreciate the help she gave me on going through this process. But what I'm asking the board to do is review my situation and grant me an opportunity to take the waiver test and recertify me under the waiver number. Also, one other thing, when I was a city police officer for the last 4 years of my career, I actually worked down at Pittsburgh Municipal Courts. Myself and another police officer, we were only two police officers. We actually did work for the courts and went around the city and served traffic and non-traffic warrants. So I do have some experience as a constable, but I never actually practiced being a constable because of the taking the probation officer job. And another thing, while as a probation officer and a police officer, every year I was required to go through update trainings, which of course involved various different types of law enforcement training. So in the past 22 years, I know it wasn't actual constable type continuing education, but I've in 22 years I've been through numerous. I couldn't even name all the different trainings I've been through. So basically, I'm just asking for the board to give me an opportunity to review my case and possibly grant me a waiver to take this test. That's all I have to say. Is there any questions the board have for me? Okay.
Officer Foley, we understand what your situation is, and as Mr. Fall indicated, it would result in a review and possibly a change in the regulations. However, I'm sure that staff's going to take a look at it. We'll discuss this. Certainly can't guarantee anything, but it will be looked at. And if there's any possibility of consideration, I think I can speak for all my colleagues that if it's possible, it will. If it's not, I mean, it's not, but we're going to take a look at it.
All right, Judge, I appreciate any consideration the board would give me.
Okay, again.
That's all. Go ahead, sir.
I said, again, we understand what your situation is.
Okay. All right, thank you, sir. And thank you, board, and have a good day.
Thank you. I didn't mean to jump in there, Chair, or Vice Chair Pites, but that's been a thing that's been brewing for a while, and I really think we need to take a look at it. Thank you for your letting him address it and Antoine address it as well.
Vice Chair Pites, at this time, there was no one else who requested permission to speak during public voice, so I will turn it back over to you.
Okay.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
I just want to ask one more question.
Please state your
get a
name.
Constable Ron Quinn, Center County and PFOC. The training for next year for Con Ed, is that going to be the same format that we have this year, or is it going to be all online, or are we going back to the classroom, or what?
It will be like this year, there'll be a in-person class and then several topics online, and we'll be publishing that information here in the fall in a bulletin.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yep.
Well, we've finished with public voice. Any discussion items we want to bring up among the board?
Mr. Chair, this is John Fowle. I have one other item. For the next meeting in the November timeframe, the goal is to have a hybrid meeting. So the restrictions that were in place on meeting in person have been lifted, and to meet the Sunshine Act requirements, we will be having a physical location to do the meeting. But the goal is to still have the technology available for people to call in and participate in the meeting. Right now, the commission is upgrading the commission room with some more technology to allow that. And as we get closer, we'll publish more about that. But like I said, the goal is to have a hybrid meeting where we'll have a physical location and people can attend in person, or they would be able to call in as this meeting. The only thing I would caution, as we've learned over the last year and a half, that could be subject to change, due to circumstances beyond our control. But that is the goal of the agency.
Sounds good, John. We're all looking forward to it, I'm sure.
Is there any other constable or other person that would like to address the board at this time? One more just house cleaning item. Has anyone else joined the meeting that was previously not noted for attendance? Just so that we can make sure that we have a full attendance sheet of who attended the meeting today. Okay, Vice Chair Pites, if you would like to request a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Anybody that would like to okay the adjourn the meeting? Speak up. Make a motion.
I make that motion, Berletic.
Bivens second.
Anybody second? Motion is accepted. Good meeting. Thank you.
John Fowle, can I expect that call soon, or should we schedule it, or what?
Yes, Judge. I'll give you a call. Just if you could send me the number you want me to call. I'm not sure I have your number on hand.
Okay. Let me make sure I have I think I have your contact information in my.
Yeah, you should have my email.
Oh yeah, I can just send you an email. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's what I'll do.
All right, Judge.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor of the motion to adjourn? We did get a second on that, correct?
All in favor? We're looking for a second.
Berletic, aye.
Westover, aye.
Norwood Bowden, aye.
Any nays or abstentions to the motion to adjourn? Hearing none, the meeting will be concluded at 10:11. Thank you all for joining. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.